welcome. This is Capt Ron, and it's Tuesday, so this must be Fearless Flight Live. And this is a show we do every week for, well, our goal is to help people trying to get over their fear of flying. And had an interesting thing happen last week. Dieter was previously committed, so I'm flying solo. And he had to ground me again because we ended up broadcasting. It looked like this. Let me show you how good I am at replicating this. So instead of
Might be a reference to a JetBlue IT issue that.
yeah, so instead of seeing this,
Yeah.
oops, this, which
There we
is
go.
what you should have seen. You
Yep.
probably saw me too. Let me undo that. I'll swap this place. You probably saw this.
Something
And
like
to
that. Yes.
one early bird who got on there before I could notify Dieter, and he went up and pulled it down so I didn't look like a complete idiot. We had a comment, and I'm sure he meant it in jest, but man, it's like, oh, I personalize everything. And so he said, oh, look at that. We got to see Capt Ron's notes. And of course, the first thing is shame, right? Because it's all about fear of flying. We don't care really how bad it is on the inside. We just worry about what people will think of us if they knew we were afraid to fly. So I got the same thing. I keep telling you that was living proof. So the first thing is I wanted to commit Harry Carey because they thought, oh man, now I'm a mere mortal. Hey, guess what? I do a lot of research to put together some new information as much as I can every week. And so there's no way I could memorize it. And I do use notes. And this is somebody who, if you would have seen me in college, I was so terrified of fear flying, my voice cracked. And I didn't do that for like 30 years. So much about fear and shame and all that. So certainly the cat's out of the bag. Yeah, I use notes when I'm talking to you. And I use every advantage I can to make you think that I know what I'm talking about. But ultimately, it's your fault if it doesn't work because you all are the ones that taught me what really works. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about maybe not so much about what really works. We're going to talk about why people don't get over it. And to me, a more serious issue is why people don't even try. So
And I think one little segue to this whole thing, and you may have that in the actual slides later, but one of the reasons why we're doing this particular episode is the average fearful flyer in our past time together, we know that people on average wait about 10 years. And that has everything to do with shame and embarrassment and believing that you're the only one before you muster the courage, so to speak, or get tired of the shame or whatever in the end motivates someone, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But it's about 10 years on average. When Ron, remember when we first kind of started going through all the surveys and stuff? It was unbelievable. That's a long time.
That's the average when somebody comes in. So that means some of you have been out there hiding in the bushes for 20 years. So kudos to whoever you are for showing up tonight. So, first thing we do, pat yourself on the back for having the chutzpah to show up because it really, really is hard. And that's why, we offer education, we offer ways to distract yourself. And I think the most important thing we have is a place where people can go, and that's our community. They're birds of a feather, which just happens to be our next slide. Because this is where you can get together with other people and you can talk to people who are in the same place you are. And the good news is we got people that have been doing this for quite a few years now too. So they come back and they provide mutual support to each other. So welcome, glad you're here. And yep, I use notes. I didn't have to use notes to fly. That's why we had checklists. But we didn't expect every pilot to know everything that we do, and that's why we use checklists. So that's my notes are my checklist there. So welcome and thanks for joining us tonight. Uh, new topics tonight. We're going to talk about the why people avoid help. And that's it. And I had a question. Dieter, somebody wrote in and Dieter headlined it to me about an incident that happened out there. And this one is so benign. I couldn't even believe it, but it bears noting. And it's one of the reasons why people don't, or why they get triggered and don't do that. And as always, Dieter's going to be monitoring comments when he's not
And
contributing.
I think that was just part of the background, Ron, that I, because I was out messaging it to you. The background was just against the backdrop of the news earlier or last year of how aged and outdated some of the FAA systems were.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
guess that's kind of prompted the question
Sure.
around the
People want to know, hey, how likely is it? Well, it turns out that had nothing to do with the age of the system. So we'll talk about that. All right. We got some polls. This is one of my other concerns last week was I talk too much on this thing. And I have people who love me who tell me that same thing. So we're going to try to make it more interactive. We promise to do that. And we literally, we value you because you're the ones that are out there trying to do it. So here's just one to start things tonight. We got a few questions to ask. If you could reduce your fear of flying, what would that mean for your life? And there's your options. And Dieter is going to put them in the chat. So if you're watching us live or you're watching the replay, you'll be able to put comments in there into Facebook. Turns out we can't do a live the way we're set up with a simulcast. We can't put them in live where we can actually give you something to click on in Facebook. So the best way we can do it is to have you put a comment in there. And Dieter be filtering those things.
Yeah, I got the first poll question in chat now.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you travel more frequently or freely? Would you be able to visit family and friends more easily? And sadly, that includes funerals and other family events. Would it open up career opportunities? Because some of you have noticed that in this day and age, some jobs you got to fly to get promoted. And the last thing, you feel proud of overcoming the fear. So just which one of those strikes you as, or you can pick more than one for that matter. So I'll move on. Dieter, since Dieter's going to copy those in there, we can keep moving. We had the question that came in was there was a story that came in about the FAA issued what's called a temporary ground stop. Actually, JetBlue is the one that notified the FAA. I don't know why it got reported this way, but this wasn't the FAA riding herd on JetBlue. It was JetBlue that did that. And the detail here, I did make some notes because I'd not even heard about this. It's a good example of how the system is designed to work. First, this was not a safety issue with the airplanes themselves. And that's so often what happens. There was no mechanical problem, no problem with pilots or air traffic control. What happened was JetBlue had a temporary internal computer system outage. You might remember Southwest got caught up in that, last year or the year before? Big problem when their systems break down. And because we all, in your daily lives, we just rely too much on computers now. And so if something goes wrong, it can really screw up the system. So what happened was JetBlue asked the FAA to issue a ground stop so that they could pause departures while the issue is resolved. Now, I don't clearly understand this, and I couldn't find any reason. I don't see why they needed to even talk to the FAA, other than maybe FYI the FAA and let them know that they were having problems and they were going to stop all their departures. But it was an internal thing. It was something that happened in IT at JetBlue that caused them to do that, and they happened to ask the FAA. And of course, anything like that makes the news because it's interesting because it doesn't happen that often. And so in this case, the pause lasted says 40 to 60 minutes once the system issue was resolved, and Here's the important takeaway, especially for any of you out there who look at these things and then make a mountain out of a molehill. Events like this often make the headlines, and it can sound like a big deal. But what actually happens and what was demonstrated here is the system has multiple layers of safety. And for me, you got to give credit to JetBlue when they saw something was not operating properly. They didn't keep forcing the system. They said, you know what, let's take a breather in this, and that's what they did. Even as something as simple as a computer glitch, the system is designed to slow down, pause, and let us fix the problems before we continue. So passengers, the worst thing is that when something like that happens, the first thing your negative bias says is, "Oh man, that can't be good. Something's not right." And the worst outcome in reality is a delay. So there's probably some people that get off the ground 40, 60 minutes after they were supposed to get off the ground. But there's nothing dangerous about that. And in understanding that difference is really, really important how to do that. So this is one of the things it turns out that keeps people from even deciding to try to get over their fear flying is when things hit the news like this, it upsets people. So
On
why
the
do yeah,
I got
yeah,
some answers, and I'd say the overwhelming
okay,
majority is freedom to travel. So that
okay,
I could travel more freely and also feel proud, and then family and friends. But I'd say more than 70%. I'm doing this in my head based on all
yeah,
the answers that I'm seeing, but say travel more freely, feel and then feel proud, and visit family or friends. So that's
okay.
that's pretty awesome. And the sense of accomplishment is obviously something to be that we celebrate a lot here at Fearless Flight. So
Okay.
um there also was a question. Have you heard that they say Burbank is a very dangerous airport to fly out of? And the man is ripe for disaster. So
Yeah, that sounds
I'm
like a
not sure
headline.
about the last part, but I think we've heard that before, or people have come and shared
Well,
that, right?
yeah, the exact topic that well, right now, I'm getting ready to go back to Cleveland to fly with a client tomorrow. And so I've been looking, and I happen to have a stepson that works in Southwest on the ramp out here in Phoenix. Turns out Phoenix, for whatever reason, we don't have the delays with the TSA that they do some other places. They've had a few shortages in the tower, he said, air traffic control. But I guess O'Hare, they had tower shortages and TSA shortages. So if you're out there flying right now because of the continuing uh, issues with the U.S. government not funding the budget fully, and there was a disagreement, so that part of the government is shut down. They're back to not paying TSA people right now. So that's making the lines bigger, and it's affecting the flow of traffic. Um,
But
so,
is there anything specifically about Burbank that is more,
oh yeah,
because
I'm sorry.
there's a couple of people that actually
Yeah,
said,
exactly. And without knowing the stories, if they could give us a link or something, we could check that out. But here's what happened. You may remember when was the last time the U.S. government shut down? I think it was back in September, December. One of the we shut down so much I can't remember anymore. But the problem with that last one was the same as the one right now. They've shut down the Homeland Security part, so those people are not getting paid. And when that happened before, Burbank Tower actually closed down one day. They came into work. There weren't enough people to man the stations. And so they just closed it down. And the thing, I did a whole show on Fearless Light Live back there. So if you go through the past shows, you'll see the one where we talked about that. And one of the things that I brought up that night was that 2/3 of the airports in the United States are uncontrolled. That means they do not have a working air traffic control tower. So probably, 95% of you would never, ever have known that had it not been for the government failure to fund itself. And so I talked about the rules that night about how we do it and what we do in an uncontrolled environment. We have a very sequential way that you learn from the first time you fly how to take off in an uncontrolled tower and how you fly in uncontrolled airspace. It basically shifts more of the responsibility for not interfering with each other in traffic. And in a nutshell, how could you operate the Burbank facility with that? Here's how you do it. You sit at the gate, and fortunately, this day and age, we have cell phones. When I started flying in 1968, we didn't have cell phones. So you had to call on the phone to something called a flight service station, tell them that you were estimating to launch. This is if you're doing an instrument flight plan. You'd call that person. Now we do it on a cell phone, and you say, hey, this is Southwest 454. We're going to be departing off Burbank here in about 15 minutes, and we're going to such and such. And they would have still had all of their company support filing the flight plans. When I was learning how to fly, if you're doing it on your own or if you're general aviation, you got to file your flight plan in addition to call up for the clearance. So I file a flight plan, which is a notice to the FAA infrastructure that I'm going to be one of the airplanes asking for their permission to enter the airspace. Then when it comes time to do that, I give them a time. Then I take off without any instrument clearance. But the weather has to be completely good, no fog, no nothing like that. I get up into the system. Now I contact one of the controlling agencies, and as soon as that controller says radar contact, now he activates my flight plan, and I'm on my way. So, and it's a little bit even more conclusive than that, but that's how we fly. So Burbank, I'm thinking this person probably either looked at an old a reference that had an old date to it, or maybe because again we're in that environment where the TSA and controllers are not getting paid. So that may be the explanation. But I appreciate it. Whoever was asked that out there, if you have more information, put it in the chat, and we can at least research it for you. But we if that's it. That's why, somebody writing a headline would say, Burbank, prescription for disaster. And that's the thing. You can't get caught up in the headlines out there. So, okay. So after almost 4 decades of work, doing this work with people, I've learned that the whole thing with fear flying has very little in reality to do with aviation. It's much more about psychology, how fear works, how the brain works. Not only, what you think about and stuff, the dysfunctional thinking we have, but the fact that your brain doesn't do things that sometimes help you avoid fear. In other words, your fight or flight system is designed to keep you safe, so it's always wired. It's about perceived risk. It's about not what happens to you, but what you tell yourself that you think might happen to you. As Dieter pointed out, has a lot to do with shame. It has to do with money. I mean, we see that all the time. People they have trouble spending money for things that soft social sciences, if you will, especially if you don't think it's going to work. Why would I want to spend any money on something that I've been 10 years in the making, getting this really, really deeply seated around me? And then one of the last things is misconceptions about treatment. So tonight we'll look at some of the old stuff, why it amplifies fear, and some of the resistances to that. So how big is it? Research suggests it's up to 40% of the people report some level of fear of flying. So what is it now, Dieter? Is it 6 billion people in the world, 8 billion people. I can't remember. Let's just say it's 6. So you're talking about 2.4 billion people, if they could get in an airplane, wouldn't, because they're afraid to fly. And I don't think those are exaggerations. I think some of them do fly, as you know, some of you out there, you fly despite not really enjoying it, but you do it because you absolutely have to sometimes, either to not disappoint family or because you need to do it for work to get someplace. And it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate because people can overcome this. We've seen it. I don't know. Any other thoughts about that, Dieter, about the scope? You've been out of practice for a long time, and I don't know whether you kept track of people who came in for anxiety due to flying, but now I imagine you have some clients that fit into that category.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so are you just talking about the the frequency of people showing up, or I find there's waves of people, and I just want to comment on the Burbank thing, because uh there has been a near miss reported, and I think it was July or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a 730, a Southwest airplane,
yeah.
and an airplane when an old vintage airplane flying through the airspace during the TSA shutdown.
Mhm, mhm. So, so why I'm saying that is because, generally speaking, when incidents or accidents happen, then we see an uptick in people reaching out, right? Because um, that's one of those things that why regular counseling is often insufficient if
Yeah,
people aren't also trained in the whole aviation part. Because when I'm sitting in an office, right, it's hard to conjure up to put myself into the space that I'm on my own when I'm in front of a computer, when I'm at the gate, do you know what I mean? So it's hard, and that's why we have this Air Hollywood class that is probably next to the free class in Phoenix. If you're not ready to fly, this is probably the best place to come,
yeah,
because it will activate your triggers just by virtue of being in an aviation themed environment. And that often cannot be quite reproduced the same way for people in a regular office, right? So,
yeah. And what Dieter's talking about is we finally got a class set up again for April 18th. We'll go over the details towards the end here. But
mhm.
and we're using the kindness of Talat, Captain, and the Air Hollywood Studios. We're gonna I always thought that best part's being in an airplane, something like that. No, we have people. We spend the first half of the class just sitting in the mock boarding area, and people tell me something that I forgot a long time ago. They get triggered on and off just sitting in the area there, thinking about waiting there. So it's if it's anything, it's an anticipatory anxiety generator for most people. And the thing that Dieter touched on again here, it's the perception of our world that causes the most problems. And your perception of riding in a car doesn't, for most people, doesn't generate anywhere near the number of issues that just the thought of getting in an airplane is. And that's because your perception says, I can't control the airplane, but I can control the car to some degree. Even if I'm the passenger, I can scream at my husband and say, stop, slow down, or whatever. But the reality is we kill 40,000 people on the highways every year, and we don't do that in airplanes. My word, if we killed 40,000 people in the airlines over a year, we wouldn't have any airlines. There would be nothing that would do that, and rightfully so. But we don't have the same attitude about highway because we'll tolerate that risk. We don't even tolerate it, I don't think, as much as we ignore it. But the perception of flying, and the perception of flying is so distorted because you just don't know that much about it. So clearly that's where education really comes in. We talked that this has always been a factor, how incidents amplify fear. And that's why when Dieter said, "Hey, can you find anything out about this JetBlue situation?" And I was I smiled a little bit when I had trouble finding it on the internet. First of all, it's such a minor story, but then when I found it and I found out that it was JetBlue decided to put their own brakes on, told the feds that they were doing that, and it made the papers, and then people understandably get amped up over that because they think something big happened. Now, we don't know, we don't even know what happened internally, but they stopped the whole thing. So news doesn't help in many cases. So. And this again reinforces the thing about why it's not about the airplane and flying. A big part of the problem, I'd say at least half the people that Dieter and I see in this day and age are more worried about the being closed in with a combination of knowing that they can't change that situation. So the fact that you get in an airplane, two things: they close the door securely, thank God, and then when you leave the ground, you know that there's just, even if you could open the door, you're not going to do it because it would be ridiculous. And so that really caused that. And then when you throw in anticipatory anxiety about that, people get triggered 6 months before they even get in the airplane because they think about when they get in the airplane, and overall they're more concerned about having something trigger their feelings that cause them to feel miserable, that they will not be able to stop, and they'll escalate out of control. And then you add to that catastrophic thinking, not about an airplane catastrophe, but about your own inability to control your feelings, your thoughts and feelings in the airplane. And that's why it's so hard for people sometimes, because it triggers the brain's fear of uncertainty. Here's another poll. Okay, what makes you feel the most anxious? So take a look at that. Turbulence, feeling trapped, claustrophobic. I should have put the word clithrophobic in there. CLEITHROPHOBIC. And that's more of a sense of feeling trapped rather than feeling closed in. There's a subtle difference. And I learned that from one of you all out there a couple of years ago now. I'd never heard the word clithrophobic, but that really seems to fit people who have flight anxiety more than anything. So turbulence, feeling trapped or claustrophobic, panic symptoms, or fear of panic symptoms, losing control of your thoughts. Maybe it's kind of synonymous with the one in top of it, or just losing control in general. And then being embarrassed if you panic. And most of these turn out to be bust, because despite how badly you feel on the inside, people on the outside, it's virtually undetectable. They just can't tell that you feel.
Okay, so we got all of the above.
Yeah.
And then also, I think, yeah, so this is one of those where there often isn't a clear winner, because it all, wherever it starts, it all ends up in the same place. Fear of flying sucks. But everybody has their own unique trigger that gets them going. I think just that's a message maybe for you, Ron. John said he may be available to talk to the group, but given that it's already noon, maybe we can do that.
Yeah, that's my plan for tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks. Jonathan, if you're listening, thank you for volunteering. As usual, I've talked too long on one. Like I run too long in one spot. So thanks. But you can bet, Jonathan, he and I are going to fly tomorrow, along with his lovely fiance, and you're going to hear from John down the road if he's still willing. So thanks for checking in, Jonathan. I appreciate it, and I'll see you tomorrow in Cleveland there. So, okay. So, uh, more to the meat of it. Why do people not seek help? Okay. And these are some of the reasons. One of the biggest reasons is seek help isn't the fear itself, but it's the beliefs you hold about fear. And we've touched on those. Worried about panic and not being able to control it. And when you fear not being able to control it and your emotions, then the fear comes up of having some embarrassing public outing of that whole thing. And over the years, I've heard these same things come up over and over again. Nothing will help. Therapy will take too long. People say when they know I do coaching sessions, and they'll say, "How many coaching sessions?" And I'll say, one or two, maybe, to get you ready to fly. And they're like, "Are you kidding me?" Because they thought it's going to be like some of their other therapeutic experiences. You're going to be tied up in therapy for years. Not true. Not true. And I think, a simple coaching session with some of the things we do now with the Fearless Flight Kit and in the classes, or just attending the shows for free every week, go a long way to just keep you in that. If you want to immerse yourself and really do a major amount of work on that, it is more expensive and more intense. But that's my experience. That's not what people want. They want to get on the damn airplane next week, and they may not fly again for another 6 months, a year, or more. So, and the other one is pointing to the shame that Dieter touched on a little bit. If there's this feeling that I should be able to handle this myself, what's wrong with me? And that is usually one of the first things that I attack when I meet somebody, whether it's a 15-minute coaching session or more. It's this feeling that they somehow should not be subjected to that, because their perception is they look out and other people aren't. You're seeing the 3 out of the 5 rather than the 2 out of the 5, like you. And because there are a lot of people are just as terrified as you are, but they don't show it, just as many of you don't. Then the other thing I touched on before, why spend money on something that I don't believe is going to work anywhere? And I think there is, it's one of the most abstract issues in mental health. And that is, how do I change? I can't, it's expensive. It's impractical to get on an airplane as much as I think I would need to. And so, I don't think that I'm going to be able to simulate the conditions enough. And then they go to therapy, and then when you're in there, of course, you're not on an airplane, so you don't get the same triggering that you do on an airplane. So why should I spend money? And these beliefs become powerful barriers that keep many of you, or kept many of you, out here. Again, I'm not preaching to the right group here, because you all are showing up, but it's the people out there that just don't believe that. But you can get over it. So let's take a look at what has stopped you from, if you can remember back to before you started checking in with us or doing something about it. Was it the expense in the first one? Was it the thoughts that therapy take too long? I'm not sure anything will actually work. And then the fifth one there is, I feel like I should, or the fourth one there, I feel like I should handle it myself. And then the last one, I worry others will think that it's irrational. So just pick one or more out of there. Dieter and I were talking after last week about changing the nature of this, and you're going to see some more changes. We want more information from you. We're not comfortable going any further in this without getting more information from you. That's why Dieter put all the time and energy into the new flap survey that we have. You're going to see us emphasizing that more and more. We're gonna have a show one week where we're just going to talk about the new website and how to navigate around there, and it'll be helpful, I think, to any of you out there. One of the things I've noticed over the years is I've been doing this long enough, for sure, and particularly with the pandemic, I saw people that I talked to 20 years earlier that came back afterwards because the pandemic added another layer to their anxiety and said, man, I just can't do this anymore. So we're looking at more practical ways. Instead of having intense courses and things like that, we're trying to bring down to the cost of engagement so that you'll be more likely to participate more actively. Most of the webinars we do there's replays, which is great on the one hand because we have the technology to do that, but it's sad on the other one because there is really a lot of benefit to coming and meeting other people that are going through the same things you are.
So
Okay.
there's definitely a clear winner, if you will, and that is I should be able to handle it myself. So
Yeah.
that is definitely, I think, the one that I'm seeing the most. Um, and then of course another one that I thought was really good is not even knowing that there is really help specifically for that available, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so
I,
that's
I
great. I
encourage
appreciate
every,
everybody sharing that, because it's not just great for us, it's like somebody else had mentioned, I thought I was the only one. And when you're seeing especially here on the live stream, and you're seeing others have the courage and share their trigger and their fear and what kept them, that's really powerful. So
yeah.
go ahead,
The
Ron.
first time I uh, participated in helping people was back in August of 1987. And I remember walking in there, I remember people looking around and saying, wow, I can't believe all these other people are here as well. It's something that is causes people to isolate so much that they just don't believe it when they see how many other people suffer like they do. So, okay. We'll talk a little bit about those of you yeah, and I think this is what skews the real numbers, is we have what we call the white knuckle endurers, or the white people that fly and absolutely hate it the whole time. Oftentimes medicated pretty heavily with alcohol, the biodiazepine family of medications, beta blockers, things like that. And you fly because you can't get out of it, but it's still an ugly experience. And I've had people, I've said to people, once you fly more, you tend to assimilate it and you internalize it like you do other experiences, like a lot of the other complicated things that you've done in life. And people, I had one fella, he flies quite rarely. He's in sales, and he says, "How come I'm not getting any better?" It's because he hasn't done anything. Not, and this is not a criticism, but he just hasn't been exposed to different ways of looking at things, and it changed the perception. If you the old joke about if you do the same thing over and over again but expect different results, it's a definition of insanity. And it is insane if you continually think, okay, I'm going to go there and something's going to change just because I'll get better just because I get on the airplane. Not true. You have to change the way you think about flying. And everybody out there, I try to help people draw on experiences where they have overcome other beliefs earlier in their life or in other areas, and they've changed them. And changing human behavior and beliefs is the hardest thing to do about life, from my own personal experience and watching others. So, so just simply enduring the experience and not doing any other of the work along with that, learning tools, changing your perceptions, increasing your knowledge, is probably not going to result in the success you're looking for. But you start building a flight plan for yourself, learning about things, different things you can do with your attention, and learning more about the whole practice of flying. You can get better, and you can get better in a hurry, and it's a lasting type of an improvement as well. What really works? CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is probably the number one thing out there. And it's called talk therapy. It's what we use to change the way we perceive things. Ultimately, exposure is what's going to get you through the experience. Being exposed, as a matter of fact, you cannot find any real relief until you expose yourself and trigger the feelings that you have, because that's how you learn how to do it better. Kind of like the way you swing in golf, your tennis serve, things like that. You can't really improve on that very much until you actually go through the motion and find out what works and what doesn't work. And it's hard because, if you're like me, when you think about looking up, trying to change this noggin up there between your ears, it's hard because we think, because thinking is such a habit, and we do it the same way over and over and over again. So uh, there are studies out there. I wanted to show up. One of the things that I found is roughly 75% of the people are able to successfully complete their first flight after they do something, whether it's a coaching call, whether it's talk therapy, things like that. And that would mirror the thing that I said. I have a lot of the news media ask me, well, how successful are you? Unfortunately, Dieter and I don't get a lot of follow-up feedback from a lot of people. That's why I put my personal cell phone out there, so people will call me, will text me in flight, because that gives me an idea of how they're doing. And I would say my unofficial experiences would reinforce that 75% of people. It's way higher than you might feel just sitting there tonight. So keep going. Don't give up. Okay. And this is dedicated to just talking more about exposure therapy. It is often the turning point for people. Some people actually want to get up in the air with somebody, so that's why I'm going out to Cleveland tomorrow. And hopefully we'll be able to bring Jonathan back and talk about his experiences. One way or the other, people are shocked when I talk to people who had a difficult time flying and bring them on too, because I want to be transparent with you all and show you what it's like, but show you the courage of people who not only get it, the people who maybe have a more difficult time, and the people who keep coming back until they get the results that they want. So there's other ways to expose yourself. A lot of you watch flight videos, and I totally support that. Just be careful that you don't get sucked in to the ones that are where, somebody pulled their iPhone out and there was hellacious turbulence going on and people screaming and yelling. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but that's probably not going to be the kind of reinforcement that you want to do. So be careful to do that. Visiting an airport, sitting in an aircraft, you can still do that, believe it or not. If you want to figure out how or see how to pull that off, let me know. In a major airline, it's not easy sometimes, but it is possible at some airports and with some airlines. So, and eventually, I recommend people take a short flight, whether it's with me or with Dee or with other people out there in formal classes. I recommend that you try to get yourself up, and that's a lot of what I do in coaching. I try to help people find someone that can go with them to support them, and in a way that they need to. Overall, bottom line is the anxiety is manageable. It's temporary. It may not feel temporary when you've tried to get on the airplane for 10 years and never made it, but it doesn't mean something as dangerous is happening. Danger is not equivalent to your feelings. It's just it. And once you get that experience firsthand, it can change your life. So what do you really want? What are you really looking for out there? That's another one. I don't think I put that in a poll. I may look at that for next week. It's, but generally speaking, people want clear explanations about how aviation safety really works and tools that you can use when your anxiety starts to climb or to keep it from climbing. And that's what, it's clear and simple. And for that, the bottom line is you got to change the way you think about things. Think about flying in particular. This is a good one. What are people willing to spend? And I touched on that. I think it's a real has a real effect on people. You know, why should I spend money on something that I don't believe is going to work? So maybe part of it is just keep coming back until you get to the point where you start to believe or start to see some changes and some insights. Jeff is one of the people that helps us in the local classes I do here at Sky Harbor at Phoenix Airport. And Jeff came every month for a year before he got the courage up to take the flight with us. And he's just a pillar of virtue when it comes to sticking with it and doing that. And he's helpful. He comes and gives back to the classes there, helping us with some of the administrative stuff. But Jeff's a good guy to talk to. I wish that all of you could come to one of our classes and talk to Jeff about never giving up.
Yeah.
So,
Ron, I did find that poll, what kind of support would help you most with fear of flying. So I put that in the chat
okay.
just now. But from my
And
own
it turns out
experience,
I had it in the slides, so I forgot.
there you go. Well, I just put it in the chat as well.
Okay.
And Sandra said, I feel the investment was priceless. And that's honestly, that's one of the reasons why we do this, because I mean, to say something is life-changing, you know, that is truly a powerful thing to be able to um go somewhere where before you couldn't even see yourself
Yeah.
getting on that plane. And the biggest, you had that slide up, I find the biggest challenge that people often face is the investment. It's not so much that you couldn't pay for it, but if you don't have the belief that it's actually going to work for you,
For
right?
sure.
Why even bother? And that is such a hard sell, if you will, not just for us, but in any kind of um area where coaching or therapy is kind of like meeting this self-esteem kind of portion of our psychology. And when I'm looking here, I can see so many of the of the answers to our poll question. It's all about practical tools and understanding.
Yeah.
That's really um where most of the answers kind of land. Um
When I get inquiries from even national news things, almost always they say, "Hey, somebody said you told them to use a drinking straw," and that's probably one of the most often asked for things. And it was just something that I heard from somebody else years ago. And you grab a drinking straw when you're going through the food court at the airport, and just use it to practice your breathing. And the thing about it is, the practical nature of it is, one, if you put the straw up to your mouth, it tells your brain, hey, what are we doing this for? And then so it interrupts that thought process that was probably moving towards being out of control. And two, the practical reality that it allows you to regulate your breathing. You can't breathe in and breathe out as fast if you're exchanging your air through a straw. So when Dieter said people want practical tools, that's what I've seen. They want to know, what can I do to make a difference? So that's why we have organized most of our programs around, of course, now I'll forget it, but having actual tasks to perform, because it's the difference between learning how to fly, if you're a pilot where you got controls to manipulate there, and learning how to ride as a passenger where you'd have, allegedly nothing to do. So we help you create a flight plan where you can come up with things to do. And that comes up in every phase of flying, but it's particularly helpful for people who are learning to do long hauls, which we talked about last month in the monthly group coaching thing. So, okay. moving on. The real issue here is confidence. That's what you're doing. Whether you're buying it or whether you're acquiring it, what you're really working on is getting confidence. Number one, you need to have confidence that modern aviation is safe. Absolutely. It absolutely is the first thing. Airlines, the number one the thing that they know from marketing is people fly. They get on their airplanes, they buy tickets when they have an overall feeling that they're going to get from point A to point B. Seems like common sense, but we all are anchored by that same pull. And the other thing, the other form of confidence is that you can manage your own anxiety when it shows up. And those two things together are what get people on airplanes with a greater sense of peace and serenity. And confidence, you need confidence when the moment comes that you'll actually step onto the airplane. You, it's like the old lottery joke, you can't win if you don't play. Well, you can't get better if you don't get on the airplane. And yes, it takes the proverbial big leap of faith, but it's so true. And when you begin to think or perceive that change is possible, when you believe that you can fly again, everything shifts. Fear loses its grip, and you get hope where you used to have avoidance. And that belief that it's going to be better and it's possible opens the door for you to finally take the trip, see the people you love, and get the freedom that you not only can choose, but that you deserve. Um, it's time for us to talk about and promote a little bit our next Fearless or Clear for Takeoff 101 in-person class over in Los Angeles, actually north of there now at Valencia at the Air Hollywood Studios on April 18th. The class itself will run from 10 a.m. in the morning until 1 p.m. right just after noon. And it'll be, like I said, it'll be an in-person class, which is the foundation of what I've been doing over the last 39 years. We have the facilities at Air Hollywood for anybody who has the good fortune to be in the area at that point in time. And the Air Hollywood has a mock-up boarding area or terminal area where we sit down there. We actually go through a mock jetway, and then we eventually get on a airplane mock-up. And despite the fact that you can see there's no nose on the airplane, there's no cockpit, there's no engines, there's no wings, people get in it and they feel all of the anxiety that they normally do on a regular full-size airplane. So we can simulate some of the sights, some of the sounds, and some of the sensations of real airline travel. But believe it or not, the greatest transformation takes place in the waiting area, and it's a nice studio. It's a great experience. Go on, join the birds of a feather. Ask if you have any doubts. Talk to some of the people who have done that class over there. So we hope you can make it. Dieter, you want to point out the link and some of the
Yeah, I've already put the link in the chat. So you can go over there now. Actually, I don't think you mentioned it. Right now, we still have an early bird special. So yeah, take advantage of that. Um, get your seats. We'd love to have you. And the only other thing that oh, how do we get a hold of Capt Ron and see about taking a flight with him? Um, what you're doing for John in Cleveland, somebody's asking. So I'll just put the email in the chat, the email address in chat, and then
You know what? I think Jonathan's willingness to come on, he had an engagement with his wife tonight. He had to support her, or wanted to support her. She was getting an award, and that's why he was tentative. Otherwise, he would have been here. So I got a good idea about what's gonna be on the show next week, and we're gonna talk about flying. Okay?
Okay, so I just put the email address to reach out also in chat. And
Yeah, and you can, right,
lastly,
and you can email me and ask me about that. And I need to apologize. Somebody I can't remember, somebody actually wrote me and asked me about that. I, for the life of me, can't figure it out. I punched it off before I left it. And so there's somebody out there that I have not responded to, which is criminal, but hopefully they'll forgive me for that.
and the other thing that I just wanted to make sure, so because there was a question about registering for the upcoming monthly group coaching webinar, and we're actually making this the first month where we are going to practice this whole thing on our new platform. So I am not quite ready to release it yet. The link will be ultimately the same short link. We just we'll have it ready next week at the latest, but we'll send out an email on the weekend how to sign up for the monthly group coaching webinar. Ron, do we have a sorry, did you maybe I missed that? Do we have a topic yet?
Not yet. It's
Okay,
it's going to be it's going to be related to expanding on the things we talked about tonight.
okay, perfect. So we'll email as soon
Yeah.
as we have the new registration um, process up there. And okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, I'm glad. I'm
Okay.
glad I was able to address that. And that was about it
Okay.
from the
Well,
chat.
the one thing you touched on that I'm going to touch on briefly as well. We have been alluding to this new platform, which means nothing to the average person out there. If you could see what Dieter does between the shows each week, oh my gosh. And I kind of understand some of it, but just enough to be dangerous. And if it weren't for Dieter, we wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff. It looks so easy sometimes to just crank up your Zoom and whatever, but it's really tough. And unfortunately, some of you have noticed lately in the transition, we've had links that quit working and things like that. And we're working to a different time. It I don't want to sound like a victim, but man, it's complicated sometimes. So it's a lot easier flying airplanes than it is to run a website and stuff. So I appreciate that. And the other
Yeah.
thing, I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. I actually remember we never changed time in Arizona, but that causes problems because in the rest of the year, like last week, the show starts in my time zone at 7:30, and then it goes back after the time changes into the summer here. There, so I'm gonna pat myself on the back for thank God Dieter was here too, because it'd be a good opportunity. I show up about an hour late, and you wonder where the heck is he? So anyway, all right. So this is a little slide. I just want to remind you, you're not broken. You believe what you do because one, it's part of being human, and to believe the way you do, and we all had really significant inputs. You know, half of our lives were about nature, half about nurture, and together we come out as very complex human beings. And we have these patterns in the way we believe, but they're not unchangeable. That is the thing that I see, and you all have shown me in the last 39 years that you actually, half of my life, you have been proving to me that the human beings, that we can as human beings change if we want to. And you know, my metaphor, the elephant and the rider, you can make those two parts of your brain that are doing different things, you can make them into a really solid team, an elephant and a rider, where the elephant continues to be on guard and protect you, but the rider can be that soothing part of you that keeps you feeling safe and bringing you back from the edge when you go out there. So with that, thanks again for joining us tonight. We love doing this for people. We love the format. And tell us if you like things. Tell me tonight. We've done polls before and questions, but tell us if that was more engaging, because Facebook isn't necessarily the best place to people don't come on Facebook to sit there and watch for an hour. And so we appreciate the patience that you have exerted. Let us know if it was worth your time. Okay. And with that, Dieter, thanks once again. Appreciate all that you do to help me out. let me at least open up. I should have done this a little bit more often, but hard to do two things at once. So thanks. Thanks,
Well, I
Dieter.
can
Thanks,
tell you,
Dieter.
Ron, I mean, we're probably
Yeah,
here after the show, but I can tell you that we had a lot more participation and
yeah.
engagement with the poll. So thank you to all of you for answering,
So,
because
so to
it
me, it
takes
reminds me of the adage I heard. We're born with two ears and one mouth, and there's a message. So I will work more to figure out how we can make it more interesting and engaging for me to exercise my mouth less and my ears more. So, okay.
awesome. Well, thank you. And thanks, Sarah. She said love this and love the polls.
Okay.
You're both doing amazing work. So thank you. And looking forward to next week. And we'll have that link for the group coaching call as well then. All right.
Okay. Good night, everybody. See you next week.